Welcome back. We are joined by Representative Mike Flood. He's a Republican of Nebraska and member of the Financial Services Committee. Congressman, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning to you. A lot of snow here in Washington, D.C.
There is indeed. You serve on the Financial Services Committee, and it has oversight of the Treasury Department. You recently met with Treasury Secretary Bessent about Elon Musk's role in the federal payment system. Can you tell us what you discussed with him?
Well, basically two things. I asked the Treasury Secretary, what kind of access does Elon Musk have to the federal payment system? Because it is a question I'm getting quite often from people that live in the 1st District of Nebraska. And he assured me that Mr. Musk has read-only access, looking at payments that have already occurred in our federal payment system, and that only 2 employees at the Treasury system, one of whom he personally interviewed, manage that system going forward. And so I shared that with my constituents in a letter, which has since become public. And I also just said, as a member of the legislative branch, I very much respect Article 1 authority, and the power of the purse belongs in Congress. At the end of the day, we have to work with the executive branch to deliver tax cuts to the American people and spending cuts to the American people. And I feel like we're on the right path to do that.
And can you tell us about the individuals that Mr. Musk has employed to review that data from the various agencies?
Well, I don't know many of them personally. There's one from my district, actually, an extremely smart young man, Mr. Ferreter. He has been earning the news for, earning news and news coverage for some of his other feats. He's got an extremely bright mind. I think he successfully decoded ancient scrolls using artificial intelligence. So at the end of the day, as somebody who represents Lincoln, Nebraska, I'm extremely proud of him. I think Elon Musk has demonstrated through his career that he can find innovative ways to solve very difficult problems. And there's good in that. It's good to be looking at our spending. It's good to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. It's good to make sure that the American taxpayers are getting the value for their dollar. And at the end of the day, I'm somewhat frustrated that there's been such a pushback on looking at our federal spending. This is the #1 question I get when I go to the VFW club in Columbus, Nebraska. How are you going to rein in this crazy spending? Now we see a president willing to slay this dragon.
And there's an article here from The Hill that came out yesterday with the headline, "Judge Adjusts Ruling Blocking Musk and Doge from Treasury Department Payment Systems." It said that the federal judge clarified the ruling preventing Musk's Doge from accessing the Treasury Department's payment system. It does not extend to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Are you comfortable with the access that the people around Musk has and the oversight of those individuals, that they would not download personal information or make any adjustments?
Well, we expect people's personal and confidential information to be safeguarded and protected. That is a absolute. And I think on the same line, you have to give the Treasury Secretary the ability to run the Department of Treasury. And here in this case, we've got Elon Musk, who technically works for the White House, working to look at the payments that have already occurred. How is that any different than a state that has a state auditor? In my home state of Nebraska, we have a state auditor who is aggressive and on it and working 24 hours a day to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and it makes our system better. I think this is good for the American people. I think this review is very positive. And quite frankly, as we're trying to extend the 2017 tax cuts here in Congress, we need to identify programs that we can eliminate to find the pay-fors to make those tax credits work, or tax cuts work.
I wanted to show you, Congressman, the Republican Senate leader, John Thune, yesterday. He was asked about legal actions against the Trump administration and whether it should comply with future rulings. Take a look.
Can I get your reaction to J.D. Vance's comment over the weekend that judges are not allowed to control the legitimate power of the executive? Do you agree with that? And do you think the president and his administration should comply with federal court rulings?
Well, I think what you're seeing right now is the natural give and take between branches of the government. We have 3 branches to our government, as you all know. And the courts have a way of mediating or refereeing, if you will, some of the disputes between the Article 1 and Article 2 branches of the government. And I think that's what you're seeing here. And I think this is a process that will continue to play out. But do I believe that the courts have a very, very valid role and need to be listened to and heard in that process? The answer is yes.
And Congressman, just to clarify, the question of the reporter followed Vice President J.D. Vance's comments on social media saying, quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power." Your response?
Well, listen, there's a natural tension between the three branches of government, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. And I know this firsthand. I was the Speaker of the Nebraska legislature. I'm now a member of Congress. Article 1 clearly gives Congress the power of the purse. The executive branch clearly has enumerated authority that extends into running the government on a day-to-day basis. Here's one of the things I think is important to talk about. As President Trump comes into office, his administration will not be more vulnerable in this first 2 months because he's getting his leadership in place. The Green New Deal, for instance, the Inflation Reduction Act. We know there's a lot of folks out there trying to pull money out of the U.S. Treasury for grant programs and running basically on the system right away to try and get that money out of here. I think President Trump was right to pump the brakes. At the end of the day, the American people elected Donald Trump to impose his platform, which clearly is not in sync with some of the grant programs that the federal agencies were doing. You can't let the courts micromanage the executive branch, but I agree with Leader Thune. The court's rulings are to be respected. But we also have to remember, you may have a federal district judge in Washington, D.C. that rules one way. You might have a federal district judge in Colorado that rules a different way. Ultimately, these things work their way through the appellate system and ultimately land on the Supreme Court's desk. And I'm confident that the three branches of government will maintain their autonomy. The courts will do what they have to in interpreting the Constitution. And President Trump is going to do what he needs to do as the chief executive of this country to cut federal spending, to work with Congress, to deliver reconciliation with us, and provide an extension to his 2017 tax cuts.
And Congressman Mike Flood, a Republican of Nebraska, will be with us until almost the end of the program. You can start calling in now if you'd like to talk to him. Republicans are on 202-748-8001. Democrats are on 202-748-8000, and Independents 202-748-8002. Congressman, since you mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, I wanted to ask you about a bill that you introduced called Ending Green Giveaways Act. And this would roll back funding for targeting so-called environmental and climate justice challenges. Can you tell us a little bit more about that bill?
Well, the EPA's own Inspector General said this was littered with poor language, this act, and that it didn't make any sense, and that we had people that were drawing down money for purposes that weren't meeting even the intent of Congress. This is just an opportunity, I think, for the Congress, and this is part of our job with oversight, to put the brakes on some of the things that were happening under the Biden administration. This Ending Green Giveaways Act has resonated with people across the United States. Even folks that really care about renewable energy were like, what is environmental justice? What are we doing here? What are we trying to accomplish? At the end of the day, what matters to Americans is, do we have energy independence? Can we afford to heat our home or to cool our home in the summer? Do we have enough energy to run our businesses? Are we experiencing brownouts? The idea of environmental justice, that's part of, in my opinion, the woke Biden agenda that fits right in with DEI and everything else that the American people have clearly rejected.